Indeed, GCIC is nurturing green businesses. In 2016, when I was introduced to the GCIC, I sort of loved the green economy and sustainability, but I think I've moved on from a lover to a passionate practitioner, and my everyday life now revolves around sustainability. And I think, Ruka, can add me to one of your successes, converting me into a true believer. Now, we have 3 sessions coming up, and everything we are doing here is strictly according to the COVID-19 protocols. Those of you watching us online via Zoom and Facebook Live, we shall take your comments and your questions as well, so don't worry. You're also part of this audience, and you're going to run this event with you. We have the Deputy Danish Ambassador with us in the house, Her Excellency Bridget Matson. Please put your hands together for her to welcome her. We have my favorite man in education in Africa, Patrick Uwa Jr., President of Ashesi University, also with us. We have the CEO of Dalex Finance, Mr. Ken Thompson. He's also with us in here. We also have some of the key partners of the GCIC here. We have the Senior Manager, EY Ghana, Daniel Abibio, the Energy Advisor for SNV Ghana, Dramani Bukari. Gerald Foucault is with the United Nations University Institute for Natural Resources in Africa. He's a policy fellow. Please acknowledge him as well. And we have the executives of the GCIC also with us. Ruka Sanusi, the lady who needs no introduction, GCIC Executive Director. We also have other executives. I'll be running through the list as we go along. Mike Est is with the World Bank. He'll be joining the last session. Jabanona, partner with the EY Ghana, also a strong supporter of the GCIC. He's also here with us. Please put your hands together for him. And Yaba Hafa is also here. She's also moderating one of the sessions later today. Please put your hands together for her as well. Now, we shall start today's session with the opening remarks, and Agatha Poloska, who is the World Bank Operations Manager for Ghana, Liberia, and Sierra Leone, will be representing the World Bank Country Manager to give us the opening remarks. Please, let's give Agatha a round of applause. She's joining us virtually, so let's give her a round of applause as she addresses us.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me, colleagues?
Agatha, we can see you, so you can
Yes. Go. And can you hear me as well?
If you can hear us, we can see you, but we can't hear you.
Oh, that's a trouble.
So if your microphone is on mute, please unmute.
No, it's not. No, it's not. I have unmuted my mic. Okay, let's try again. I get that people can hear me online, but can you hear me in the hotel, in the venue?
Agatha, if you can hear me, just give me a wave, just to be sure you can hear me.
I can hear you. Yes. Yes.
Good. So we can see you, we can't hear you. We are going to fix it shortly so that you can give us the address. Okay. Well, we can hear you now, so you may proceed.
You can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. The joys of the virtual world. Thank you so much, and good morning to everybody, to all distinguished guests and colleagues from the government, development partners, civil society, private sector, ladies and gentlemen. It is a real pleasure to be here today, even though virtually, as a keynote speaker for the strategic dialogue on Ghana's green recovery, organized by the Ghana Climate Innovation Center, or the GCIC, as we all know it. Thank you very much for the invitation to deliver this opening remarks that will set the stage for today's discussion. This dialogue aims to highlight the importance of sustainability and resilience to climate change, even in the challenging times brought by the COVID pandemic. My remarks will focus exactly on that question. Why should Ghana be talking about climate change and sustainability in the middle of tackling a health and economic crisis that is having significant and immediate impact on Ghana's economy and the livelihood of its citizens. I think there are at least 3 reasons for keeping green as a priority within Ghana's economic plans. The first reason is that climate change is happening and has real impacts on Ghana's development today. Let me give you a few examples. Rising temperatures and changing rainfall patterns are reducing productivity growth in the agricultural sector, which employs more than half of Ghana's workforce and contributes to about 40% of the country's real GDP. Rising sea levels are eroding Ghana's coastlines, leading to loss of land, forced resettlement, and internal migration towards urban areas, putting pressure on housing and infrastructure. Floods and unpredictable rainfall are having negative impacts on access to clean water, food supplies, and on health, risking increases cases of cholera and malaria. So the impacts of climate change have arrived in Ghana, and addressing them cannot be pushed off to a later date. Which brings me to the second reason to focus on a green economic recovery. A green recovery can make Ghana more resilient to climate impacts. A green recovery means that Ghana's infrastructure is built to withstand floods and support growing urban populations. It means that farmers can stay on their land by getting the technology needed to adapt to changing rainfall patterns and temperature. And it means Ghana industries are more competitive as they are incentivized to use resources efficiently. The World Bank's global experience is that these features of a green economy do not materialize without active planning. Targeted public policies and public-private partnerships are necessary to deploy the climate technologies and solutions that will build a resilient and sustainable country and economy. The third reason to focus on green economic recovery is a practical one. A green economy can attract greater investments to Ghana. The business around climate technologies offer a big opportunity. The World Bank has calculated a market size of $6.4 trillion for climate businesses in developing countries in the current decade. $1.6 trillion of that market is accessible to small and medium enterprises. Investors in renewable energy, water purification, and sustainable agriculture, just a few examples, are looking at Ghana as a potential investment opportunity. And an international climate finance architecture is already in place to facilitate these investments that can help to build Ghana's economy. Our host today, the Ghana Climate Innovation Center, is an important contributor to Ghana's green economic agenda. The GCIC is designed to incubate and grow domestic businesses involved in climate technology sectors. GCIC's sister organization, Bangarra Green Ventures, provides an important source of early stage risk capital for Ghana's green ventures, those that have advanced past startup stage, but are still perceived to be too risky to attract traditional bank or SME fund finance. It is encouraging to witness the progress made by the GCIC and Bangarra in advancing Ghana's green economy, and now in sharing and exchanging lessons on entrepreneurship support with other actors in Ghana entrepreneurship ecosystem. The GCIC has been funded by the generous support of the Danish and Dutch governments through the World Bank. We have also been a technical partner to GCIC since its inception. I would like to acknowledge the strong partnership the bank has had with both embassies here in Ghana throughout the project and thank them for supporting this innovative initiative. We are now using the lessons from this support to the GCIC project to scale up support for entrepreneurship in Ghana, as well as other countries. It has not always been an easy path for GCIC, and there are many lessons learned from this innovative effort. In fact, It would have been simpler for the World Bank and development partners to provide financing for foreign businesses to come to Ghana to build green projects such as wind farms and solar parks. But supporting local participation in these green industries can offer a more lasting development impact. Building and supporting local businesses leads to creation of jobs, increasing domestic tax revenues, and reinvestments of profits in Ghana. This is why we feel GCIC feels a unique and important place in Ghana's green growth plans. GCIC's journey is underway, but we expect more to come. Much like its own clients, the GCIC was intended to be incubated with support from developing partners, evolving from an idea to ultimately operating on its own as a fully fledged business incubator committed to developing SME ventures and entrepreneurs in Ghana's green economy. While the bank will continue to support the broader entrepreneurship in Ghana, we are transitioning out of direct support to the GCIC. However, we are encouraged to learn that other development partners are considering support to a next phase of GCIC's development. As you enter this phase, let's call it GCIC 2.0. And I would like to encourage the GCIC team to embrace even greater ambitions for the center, such as building stronger links to foreign investors interested in investing in Ghana's green economy, operating as a central link to global climate financing facilities, such as the Green Climate Fund, in order to bring in climate funding to Ghana at scale, providing focused support for entrepreneurs to scale regionally and globally. Importantly, innovating further on scaling women-led businesses as GCIC builds off its innovative Women's Economic Transformation Program, fostering deeper integration with other incubators and investors in the ecosystem for the collective benefit of Ghana's entire entrepreneurship ecosystem. And finally, increasing GCIC's presence at international climate events to influence the conversation on climate change and green policy to Ghana's and Africa's benefit. I will end here stating that the World Bank is committed to continue supporting entrepreneurship and green growth in Ghana. We are proud to partner with the government in planning and executing a strong and sustainable development path. And I look forward to engaging and partnering with all of you in advancing a green economy for Ghana's economy. On behalf of the bank, I wish you a successful event and a fruitful discussion. Thank you all for your time and your attention. Medase, and over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Agatha. Yensuya Dase, Mongode, for your speech. She touched on all the salient points, and we are going to move into the first conversation, which will set the ball rolling for the rest of the dialogue. Now, this dialogue is titled The World Today, and this session will challenge the panelists to present sustainable policy actions and measures that will deliver better development to Ghana and the world. And to moderate this is my colleague, Bernardino Kokwavle, 2017 GJ Journalist of the Year, General Manager for City FM and City TV, and the smartest brain on radio and TV. Please put your hands together for my colleague Bernard to come and moderate this session.
Thank you, Kojo. The appellations you are giving me, it won't have any effect on your salary. So I don't really understand why. Can you kindly move this for me? You know, when you have your colleague with you and they're in public, they have to say the right thing so that at the end of the month it will reflect in their pocket. Sorry, Kojo, but thank you. Those are very kind words. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is a global event. These days, we don't have borders and time is also of no essence. So thank you for joining us. We had the ambassador on Zoom. And those of you who are joining us from all over the world, thank you. I'm going to invite my panel members up. Mr. Ken Thompson, CEO of Dalex. Put your hands together for Ken. Thank you, Ken. And Patrick Ewua Jr., President of Ashesi University. Patrick, please join us as well. And last but not least, Her Excellency Bridget Lacour Matson, who is the Deputy Danish Ambassador to Ghana. Please put your hands together for her. Yes. So we have a very simple remit. We have 30 minutes to set the scene for 2 other panels. And the way I see the flow of the panel discussions, I think our job is to sort of give the proper context of where we are and do some high-level things. Then the details will coming from Jewel and Yaba. So if I'm going off track, Yaba, please let me know. Yaba is the panel, the moderator for the 3rd panel. So the world today is the theme for this panel. And I was asking somebody, what do hurricanes, floods, fires, and locusts have in common? Hurricanes, fires, floods, and locusts. What do they have in common? We know the fires in west coast of the US. California is having lots of fires. A few days ago, I think there was a threat of a hurricane somewhere in the world. There's flooding in northern Ghana because of the dam overflow from Burkina Faso. And then, of course, in East Africa, a month or 2 ago, there was a whole issue of locusts just eating and destroying people's farms. And I think climate change is here to stay. Other interesting thing to say by opening is that in some parts of the world, their elections are climate-based elections. Well, here, today on my radio show, we discussed Okada, motorbikes. Okay, so that's a different climate. That's economic climate, not. But I mean, it's just interesting how if you follow the US election, it's like this is the climate election. Some people say they don't believe in science, and it's a big issue. But we'll get there. So just to give it the context, climate is big and very important. So what we'll do with our panel today is for them to give us their own views of how critical and important is the issue of climate, right? And we are very blessed to have a development partner, somebody from human capital and education, and then somebody from private sector. So basically, private sector are the people who give us the local money, and the development partners will give us the donor money, and then Patrick will use that too. Ken Thompson is looking at me straight. Ken, I'm just joking. So essentially, how serious is climate change from your perspective as a development partner, as an educationist, and also as a private sector business in finance? That's the first question we'll try and answer. And then we'll try and look at what you're doing within your space to deal with it and how we can get more action on it. How can we redefine priorities? How can we raise the resources needed to deal with the problems of climate change and its effects on us? Is that a good plan? Fantastic. So let me start with Bridget. Since you're, sorry, Your Excellency, forgive me, Your Excellency. So maybe spend the first 2 minutes telling us a bit about what you do at the embassy, okay, and what the embassy is on about by way of opener, and then we'll delve into the issues. So please, there's a mic next to you. This is the first time we have you on this platform. So please tell us a bit more about what you do at the embassy.
Sure, this is working.
Yes, it is.
Thank you so much for the invitation. It's a real pleasure to be here. It is the first time that I'm engaged with the GCIC. I've been in Ghana for a year, but I've been following it on the sidelines, and it's a real pleasure to be here. What we do at the Danish Embassy in Accra, very briefly, we are completing a transition. We've been undergoing for the past 5-6 years, moving from aid to trade in headline terms. Ghana completed or reached middle income status. Danish development assistance has to be focused on the poorest. So a decision was made to transit out of development assistance as we know it traditionally and increase our commercial relationships with Ghana. So in a nutshell, that's where we are. And that also explains why our last sector program is a private sector program, which has put a lot of emphasis on involving the private sector in a private sector program instead of having it led just by public sector people. So that's where we are. And if I can respond to your other question from a Danish perspective, I don't think there is, COVID-19 aside, any other, any bigger challenge than climate change. I think from a Danish perspective, this is a climate crisis. And you say elections become climate elections. That was definitely the case in Denmark a year and a half back. The election was won on a very, very green platform. And there's a commitment by the current Danish government to place the green transition at the very center of all our policies, and a commitment made legally in law now to cut our emissions by 70% measured from our 1990 emission levels by 2030. That is the most ambitious goal in the world. Whether or not it's realistic, we can discuss that, but we firmly believe that this journey starts by setting the goal, and then we'll find a way to get there.
Thank you. That was a great intro. We'll come back to you on how this relates to your priorities in your aid to trade for places like Ghana. Patrick, so again, not everybody may have heard of your wonderful work. So tell us a bit more about what you do, and then how big is climate and climate change within your sector and to you personally? Okay, make sure his mic is on.
It's on.
Yes, yes it is.
Okay, you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm the president of Ashesi University. It's a college of about 1,200 students, currently all undergrad, with majors in STEM and business fields with a liberal arts core curriculum. Our real focus is educating leaders for the future, leaders who care about the common good. Your microphone is not loud enough. Okay, so citizen leaders. And so that's a focus of Ashesi. We agreed to host the Ghana Climate Innovation Center because when you think about the common good, climate is something that it's a global issue. It's not just Ghana, it's all of Africa, it's all of the world. And we would like to make a contribution in this area. And so hosting the center was a way to, first of all, work on something that is globally important, but also get us to reach out beyond the borders of our campus. So we're essentially hosting entrepreneurs who are not students of Ashesi, but whose work is very important, and hoping to use this also as a connection to get our students and faculty to focus more on climate issues, to work with some of these companies that are working in this very important area.
Interesting. Thank you for sharing. Ken Thompson, CEO of Dalex. A bit more about you and Dalex, and then the climate conversation.
Good. Is it good afternoon, good evening, good morning? Yes, good day. And Dalex Finance is, I call it a digital finance company. So we have been on a digital journey for the last 10 years or so, and our products are delivered digitally. In our sector, we're the leaders. I mean, we lead it by a mile. I also do a lot of speaking on the economy and the financial issues. What I'd say is that the conversation on climate change and entrepreneurship and businesses has to be looked at slightly differently within the context of the pandemic we're in now. And particularly in Ghana, it becomes more difficult because this is an election year where our politicians preach prosperity economics and prosperity, if you listen to the manifestos, Ghana will be transported to Ashesi, one of your best faculties, by January 2020. So it's a difficult time. And the conversations that we need to have to address the issues are not being had. I don't know whether they're not going to happen this year. I mean, we're talking about spending. We're talking about spend, and there's no money to spend.
Yeah.
And so it's a challenge. But with respect to the private sector, it's about the bottom line. And as long as the returns make sense, we'll do it. I mean, it's that simple. And I don't think that approach is different whether you're in Denmark, whether in America, whether you're wherever you are. It's about the bottom line. But the discussion we need to focus on is with the chance to reset, because we have a chance to reset. What should we do which is sustainable, which is beneficial, and which brings prosperity? And later on, I'll talk about some of the
Yeah, but when you say with the private sector, the returns should be whatever, don't you think we can question that in this era? Because when you say a return, what do you mean? Are you talking about the financial return, because there are other returns. So should you guys not redefine what a return is in this period?
Money doesn't define return. Bernard, it's never happened, will never happen. It's about how do I create value, and what was the most, if I put my money in whatever I put my money in, what will give me the best value for it? That's as simple as that. And there's nothing wrong with that. The important thing is to make sure you have regulation so that it's done in an ethical manner and a responsible manner. There's nothing wrong with that. But have regulation to ensure that these things are done in an ethical, responsible, and environmentally friendly manner. That's the most important thing.
Okay, well, what I was trying to press you on was, so essentially, at the end of the day, they'll look at your balance sheet and they'll say, we got X amount of money and this is what came out of it. Are you in a position to say, yes, the financial profit was lower, but we had environmental credit, we had people development, so that because of the exigencies of the pandemic and climate change, a successful private enterprise is judged not just on the basis of the balance sheet, or the balance sheet has to be rewritten to include other dimensions of profit, which is what I'm driving at.
Yes, that's a fair point. And I think that, you know, in the recent Black Lives Matter movement, you know, a lot of international multinationals have done some readjustment to incorporate the things that they are doing in this area to make them appear more socially responsible. Yes, once you make your profit, then that becomes a responsible thing to do. But I don't think I can go to my shareholders and say, you know, I didn't make any profit, but don't worry, I trained 3,000 people to be able to farm snails based on using organic, I don't know, spinach. You know, you must make the profit.
Fair enough. Maybe I'm pushing too hard. Patrick, so he is a digital financial services company. You are an educational institution. So you are like a social enterprise, right?
Right.
So can you understand what I'm trying to say with the new reality of climate change and COVID-19? Return can be redefined.
Yeah, I totally understand what you're saying. And I think maybe you should phrase it as short-term return versus long-term return. And it's also the case that we have to think about risk, right? We don't talk about risk enough, and we should. So, you know, 5 years ago, the world knew that there was a risk of pandemic flu, right? We had seen H1N1, we had seen diseases like Ebola emerge. And there was a real conversation at the time about what does the world need to do to prepare for pandemic flu? But people who think only short term had real difficulty with this. And it has cost the world, this COVID-19 has cost trillions of dollars of lost value in the world. Okay, now today, we know that there's a risk of climate change. We see the signs, it's just like H1N1. We see fires burning in Australia, we see fires burning in the US, we see flooding, we see droughts. We see all of these things, and we need to have a conversation about what is the risk if temperatures rise beyond a certain level. So let's bring it home to Ghana. I mean, we depend so heavily on cocoa, an agricultural product. If temperatures rise 4% Celsius, and by the way, I think that there's also a miscommunication about these temperature changes, right? So when scientists say average temperatures are going to go by 2%, what it really means is that it's going to grow 4% on land, right? So the 2% includes all the oceans. So let's say temperatures rise 4%. It means temperature on land in Ghana going to rise 8%. Wow. Okay, so think about, 33 degrees Celsius becoming 41 degrees Celsius. what happens to cocoa? What is going to be the lost value in this economy if the cocoa crop is destroyed? What will happen to financial institutions when we lose our export earnings and the currency falls into a tailspin? I mean, this is how we should think about it. It's not just about short-term return. We should be thinking about long-term return, long-term value. We should be thinking about risks. And in the case of climate change, we know what the risks are if temperatures rise above a certain level. Okay. And we see the trend. So we need to be acting now to A, prevent the temperatures from going too high, and B, we know the temperatures are going to go up. It's not going to be 0% change. There's going to be a delta. And so we need to be doing research on what do we need to do to cocoa to help it survive that delta, for example.
Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Great. You've linked the climate to the economic in a beautiful way. And you've also given us more on what Ken was trying to say on the long-term, short-term. Bridget, so what are your thoughts? Because now you say we are aid to trade, right? So, and your country's elections are based on climate at least. When I look through the two main manifestos, I don't know how many lines on climate change I saw. They were in that, I don't even think there was a half paragraph. So we are in a different conversation here. Survival is more the issue here. Now, how does this play out for a development partner like you, where your country really is on the money on climate, and you're in a situation where even though climate is important, sanitation, we don't do that well on all global rankings. It doesn't seem to be the priority of even the government.
Well, I think it's a priority for someone like us and other development part. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Go through? Okay. That to contribute to the conversation and to try and get away from the impression that these two things are different, that either we talk climate or we talk economy. I think we need to merge them. And I totally acknowledge upfront that Denmark is a very small country, but I think we have proven over generations that it's possible to couple economic growth, inclusive growth, with a continuous decrease in CO2 emissions. And I think it's an important lesson, and it's an inspiration for others to learn from. And I think today, us having this discussion contributes to that, and it's something we need to continue to talk about. And that's where green transition comes in, and what the GCIC is also about. We need to start small and look at what are the solutions that can show that we can have broad-based green growth rather than just growth.
But how did that happen? Was it bottom up or top down? Because a lot of people say, well, our government is not interested in climate. People just want food. Yeah. So how did Denmark succeed in doing that?
Regulation played a very important role. I think public regulation can play a catalytic role. Research is incredibly important. We've put a lot of public money into R&D. How do we do this? But always coupling it with private sector participation to try and find the solutions for how do you deliver new ways of doing things that can contribute to the goals that we've set. So you need to set the goals, and you need to put public regulation in that will drive also public finance into the investments that we need.
So regulation and then finance, regulation and finance. So Ken, I visit the GCIC and I meet a lot of young entrepreneurs who say they have a solution which is climate smart. But I don't know how successful they are in the marketplace after X years. I see some guy doing charcoal here and there. I see somebody doing some sustainable toilets and things like this. The finance part is a huge part of the conversation. What are your thoughts on how do we raise real money to support climate smart solutions, which are solving a climate problem, but also solving a real human need in a context like Ghana?
Well, there are two numbers that I've come across recently, which I'd like to share with the audience. You know, by 2050, Ghana will have 50 million people. 2050. Wow. Bernard, I'll be dead, you'll still be here. Oh, yes. By 2050, Nigeria will have 402 million people. Wow. Fact.
102 million.
400, and I think in about another 50 years' time, Nigeria will be 700-something million.
Wow.
Yes. So in these discussions, we've got to see how we're going to use this. What are we going to do? Where will they eat? Where will they sleep? You know, and we have to take measures that will ensure that we can look after the population, we can create value, and we do things that are sustainable. Because by the time we reach 50 million people, there'll be no water, water bodies that have not been polluted. 50 million Ghanaians is a lot of people, 50 million. Yeah. But what we need to do really is to, and I come back again to making sure that we take long-term strategies, we adopt long-term strategies, we take long-term policies to drive a certain benefit for the people in the future. I mean, we talked about Denmark. It's somebody, I mean, they created wealth, they used that wealth, you know, to be able to now move to another step where they say, now we want to reduce CO2 emissions, we want to do X, Y, Z, Q. But somebody has to start thinking, and nobody is thinking.
Can the private sector initiate this? I'll give you an example. I was in Denmark, I think 2 years ago, and they took us to some of their plants where they convert wastewater and they reuse it. And there's a strong private sector involvement as well in investing in these.
But Bernard, it has to be supported with taxpayers' dollars. And taxpayers, we are the taxpayers, so we say this is where we want to go and want money to be directed towards that area. It doesn't happen by chance. Why we think that we can come up with some business model, and you know, this climate, these business models, they look sexy. But that's not what's going to determine whether I put my money there or not. It must make economic sense. And we must have that conversation and say, what are we going to support that makes economic sense? Being sexy is not good enough.
You're still going back to economic and separating it from environmental. That's my problem. We've already agreed that you can't decouple the two.
Yes. Yeah, but the point out, you say, how do I attract?
Because if it makes economic sense and destroys the environment, it doesn't make sense. That's what I'm saying.
No, what I'm saying is that you're asking how
do we attract money? So for example, we want a solution that is green, is climate smart, but it's also profitable.
Bernard, if you give me that solution today and it makes economic sense, I'll put money into it. I mean, it's as simple. Well, if I put my money into it.
Okay, let me make it practical. Give you an example.
Yeah.
So we have a guy in Ashaiman, I think it's Safisana, coach, if I'm mistaken, correct me. He converts waste into power, but it's a very small scale. Ashaiman is like a semi-slum. There's a lot of waste that's generated. So what he does is he puts everything, he has a system that converts waste into, I think, X megawatts of power. I don't know how much it is. So it's very small, okay? Now, we know it's the right thing to do because we generate a lot of waste. In Ghana, we have one waste dumping site, which is full, and we haven't built a new one. We don't have as much reliable power as we want. So it's not just sexy, it makes sense. But Safisana doesn't have money.
But Bernard.
But he's not getting money from a bank to do the next level. That's the question I'm asking. But what does Safisana need to do for Dalex to say, you know what, this is a climate smart solution, do this and this and that and come back to me and I'll give you $1 million to move it to the next level.
Okay, but it's very simple. I mean, you have some of your millions in Dalex. And I said, would you invest in it?
My hundreds, not millions.
You're going back to the same point.
This is life. I have only, your Swift, I have only a few hundred CDs.
No, it's a joke. No, seriously. I mean, it's the same principle, and I don't know which other way to put it.
Okay.
If it makes financial sense, people put money into it. But if we're thinking strategically, it's up to us to say, this is the sort of business we want to survive and show the way for the future. And as a people, we direct our government to put money to support it. That's the only way it can happen.
Okay. Guys, so is there Q&A with the public too? Am I just supposed to engage them? Just as you go ahead. If somebody feels strongly about something, send me a question. I'm sure there are those of you watching who have some questions to ask. You can WhatsApp them to ask. Patrick, I hope you get my challenge. I feel that we know we need to support people like Safisana as an example, right? We need solutions that are both ways. It makes money, but it's also better than just burning coal. Yet nobody wants to give them money. Somebody wants to do bauxite and do mining and just get as much money as possible. Is it the leaders that are failing? Are we the ones failing? What can we do to change that? That's my real struggle this morning.
Well, it's a combination, right? So, and just to give context, when I was in primary school, Ghana's population was 6 million people.
Wow.
So it's grown by a factor of 5 in my lifetime. And it's going to grow even more. Wow. So, you know, I think that the Denmark example is a very good one because you actually need government regulations, and you need government funding research that leads to certain technological and scientific breakthroughs. And then you need an environment that enables the intellectual property that comes from that research to transfer into the private sector, so that products and services are produced, right, appropriately. So, you know, one of the political parties anyway is talking about, you know, getting to a place where we spend 2% of GDP in research. That's a really good thing, right? Today, the government of Ghana does not fund research. It just doesn't. The private sector doesn't fund research in this country very much. And so any research that is going on at any of our universities and research institutes is really being funded externally, and that's going to be limited. So the first thing is you've got to fund the research. You've got to have policies in place that enable, you know, products like what you're talking about in Ashaiman to have an economic benefit. The government sets policies around who generates power and sells power into the grid, right? And today, there is no intentional policy to drive green energy producers into the grid. In fact, we signed a contract with a company that is producing power on our campus via solar and selling it to us. They are having to discontinue because the Energy Commission does not allow them to sell energy. We're having to purchase that solar installation and run it ourselves. As a customer, it's so much easier to have somebody else who makes it their entire business to operate such a facility. I do education. I'm not an energy producer. I just want to buy energy from a producer. And the government regulations should enable those who want to produce energy in a green way to do so and sell in an even playing field. Then they have a business that they can go to, you know, Dalex and to Ken and say, hey, I have a good business here. The government has set the regulations so that I actually have runway to take this thing to scale. And then he puts in the financing and brings it to scale, right? So you really do need all of this working together to have the solutions that we need.
Let me end with Bridget. I know through your funding agencies like Danida, you support specific projects. Can you give us examples of the emphasis of your support to convince me that apart from what happens in Denmark, even in Ghana, you are actually thinking climate change in the projects you support and in the areas that you fund?
Yes, but would you allow me just to make a comment to what these gentlemen have talked about? Because I think that as development partners, we also have an important role to play in terms of trying to be catalytic in a way of bringing more private finance into some of the these areas we're talking about, some of the ones that touch human lives. It's about human development. And it's an area where we've worked a lot as the NIDA to try and find blended finance instruments where official development assistance can come in and maybe cushion some of the risk that the private sector finance people are not yet ready to take. So this can happen at a macro global level, but it can also happen right here, very local. So that brings me back to your other question, because as part of our support to GCIC, we have the sister organization, the Bangara Capital Company. And so it hasn't really had time enough yet to prove its worth, but it's in a microcosmos the same kind of idea that the World Bank, along with us, with the Dutch embassy and the Danish embassy, is providing catalytic funding into a fund that will then go out and hopefully be able to raise private capital that then is passed on to small and medium-sized enterprises in Ghana that's pushing climate-friendly solutions into the market. So that's where we're trying to go in and kind of make ends meet in a circle that's not completely round yet by market forces, if I can put it that way.
No, thank you. Look, this is great. I don't know if you guys have learned something. Clearly, priorities have to change. That's key. And we have to think, I like the concept of blended finance, okay, as against other types of financing. That's also important. Then the people themselves, I think Ken's main point is policy people, all right? Don't just take the old thing. So clearly, there's a lot of room to go forward. I don't know if we've built the foundation enough for you, because later on, Jewel will be moderating successes and lessons learned. I think I'll go more into the examples, and then Yaba will go into the future we want. So if it has made sense, thank you, Kojo. Do you have any questions or comments? Are you happy? Okay, then put your hands together for us.
Please put your hands together for them once again. Yes, you may leave. So when we were talking, I was taking notes, and the initial submissions, I drew a quick conclusion that our world as it is now is not sustainable. Our world as it is now is not sustainable. But then if we worked harder and if we collaborated, we could make our world more sustainable. Now, thank you, Patrick, thank you, Ken, and thank you, Your Excellency. Some of the notes, Ken says we should support innovation with the taxpayers' dollars, which I agree. If the green businesses make financial sense, they will get funding. Now, the next video we are going to see will show that the green businesses that have passed through the GCIC do make financial sense, and they are changing the way we do business in Ghana and changing people's lives. We'll show that video shortly. Now, Patrick also said that research funding and partnerships with the private sector should drive growth. So we should have a proper research fund in the country that supports research. And then regulation and incentives to drive growth are key to help drive development. And from the thoughts of Her Excellency, Ghana should prioritize the green economy. It should be a main thing that we do so that we can drive growth and lift people out of poverty. We are going to see a video about the successes and the lessons learned from the operations of the GCIC. And this will show you how far we've come and how far we can go if we get more support. So ladies and gentlemen, let's watch this video. After this, Jewel Thompson will invite a panelist into the next session, and we'll be looking at the successes and the lessons learned so far since 2016. Video, please.
The eyes of the future are looking back at us, and they are praying that we might see beyond our own time. They are kneeling with hands clasped that we might act with restraint, that we might leave room for the life that is destined to come.
GCIC was established to support small and growing businesses in Ghana who have the climate innovation, focused on 5 key sectors. So that's climate smart agriculture, domestic waste management, water management purification, solar power, and also energy efficiency. Given the global climate emergency, there is a need to ensure that the community of people that make up 70% of the economy are climate responsive and climate resilient and climate smart in how they start operating to grow their business. So the big idea is to ensure that more and more people are professionalizing the entrepreneurship to ensure that these businesses with climate innovation are successful, they can go the long haul, and they can respond appropriately to the global climate emergency.
GCIC is a unique incubator that is focused on developing green, profitable, and sustainable businesses in Ghana. GCIC develops leaders who are ethical, critical thinkers, and have a deep commitment to gender equality and social responsibility. GCIC is a disruptive force leading the efforts to mitigate climate change and driving Ghana's green economy.
But the most significant change we've seen in entrepreneurs who come into the incubator has been around the mindset change. In the beginning, every entrepreneur believes that all they need is money, and boom, they are going to be successful. Then there are those who do not recognize how difficult entrepreneurship can be. And of course, there are also the grantpreneurs who spend all the entrepreneurship journey chasing grants. Now, through interventions like the GCIC well-being, portfolio management, and opportunities to meet other relatively more experienced and successful entrepreneurs, we've succeeded in cultivating a crop of impact-based entrepreneurs who recognize the rigor it takes to build businesses, are willing to practice that rigor, and have the skill sets to actually make it work.
We've chalked a number of successes with the Access to Finance work stream within the Ghana Climate Innovation Center, one of which is a business named Neat EcoFeeds. The business actually came into the incubator at a time not many people would have the trust in them to transform their business into a viable one. We trusted in the idea and supported them with a POC grant. Today, they are a business that is generating revenue and employing people. And they've gone ahead to win numerous awards, including the African Entrepreneurship Award and the Waste Recovery Innovation Challenge. This is the belief we have in the businesses. And we've seen that if you can support young and upcoming businesses to transform their business idea models into a profitable one, the opportunities for them to scale and create employment is just enormous.
The policy and regulatory framework worked around three main pillars. The first one is about stakeholder engagement. The second stage is to do policy relevant research. And based on our research, we moved on to the third pillar, which is advocacy. The problem that we face is that the timing of our investigation is not always in line with the timing of policy changes. But we are confident that the results that we give and the knowledge products that have been produced are going to inform future policy changes or the enactment of future policies.
Marketing has been a critical part of GCIC's success. Through marketing activities and the roadshow across Ghana, we've ensured that each cohort has representation from every region in Ghana and have significantly improved gender balance by increasing the female representation from 25% in cohort 1 to 50% in cohort 5. Marketing has also ensured the public, Ghanaians, appreciate the emergency of climate change. This we've achieved through unique partnerships with City FM, our climate-focused documentary series on Multi-TV, featured entrepreneur stories in BFT, and events like the Green Run. And we've had the opportunity to participate in global events, making a case for indigenous solutions to help fight climate change in Ghana.
GCIC has one of the highest ethical standards backed by the Ashesi Way and governed by the World Bank's rules and regulations on procurement. There are three major procurement guidelines which GCIC has relied on in the execution of our work. Guidelines for procurement of goods, works, and non-consultancy services, guidelines on the selection and employment of consultants, guidelines on prevention and combating procurement fraud. And this way, we ensure that we always have value for money.
At the GCIC, our work structure has been based on collaboration, clear communication, and good leadership. Every member of the GCIC team understands very clearly that we are part of something great and that we could use our work at GCIC as a tool to effect change. We're a team with such diverse backgrounds, and it has been a phenomenal experience, learning from each other and building lifelong friendships. We are proud of the transformation we have inspired in businesses, in livelihoods, and in Ghana's economy. We look forward to continuing our work in GCIC 2.0.
GCIC has achieved many successes, and first and foremost, it's the only national green business incubator in Ghana. But I think what GCIC has done that's remarkable is to really seek to provide small and growing businesses with the skills, the tools, and the professional business advisory services that they need to thrive in their business. Developing a community of enterprises that can network together, that can learn from one another. Internationally, our organization has also been recognized for having a business model that works at the nexus of climate change, private enterprise, ecological prosperity, and economic development, and to do so with a focus on small and growing businesses. With big corporations, you have the likes of the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, which major corporations are all part of. We need that kind of, should I say, interaction at the small and growing business level, And I think that's what the model of the CICs and GCIC does. So future-friendly, future-forward enterprises that are solving societal problems, solving economic problems, creating jobs, as well as responding to the ecological issues as well.
Tackling climate change cannot just be a matter of protocol or a simple adaptive practice. It needs to be a national mindset. For both individuals and businesses, there needs to be transformation. At GCIC, we understand it won't be an easy journey, but we are ready to explore ways in which we can do just that.
We continue to improve our program based on lessons we learn as we execute. First lesson is around the provision of funding to entrepreneurs. The thinking traditionally has been to put in place stringent corporate governance structures. What we found at the GCIC, however, is that the problem is not the diversion of funds into private pockets, but how entrepreneurs make decisions and apply the funding in ways that provide the best returns. This learning is what informed how we structure the portfolio management to ensure that when GCIC provides funds to entrepreneurs, these entrepreneurs get the best support in making their decisions on how to apply these funds optimally. The second lesson has to do with how we do our search and selection and the importance of ensuring a good fit between entrepreneurs and the incubator. GCIC does this by first providing a public forum for alignment with entrepreneurs, and then administering psychometric assessments to all shortlisted applicants. The forum ensures that entrepreneurs are also able to assess and decide if the GCIC is what they need and what they want.
At GCIC, we aim to be a center of excellence, growing Africa's green economy through sustainable entrepreneurship, innovation, and climate policy advocacy.
And I think what is great about the model of the GCIC is that it encourages all of us as businesses, as individuals, as consumers, as even the government sector to consider and respond to the need to ensure that we're creating a future that is better than what it is that we have today.
So that's a video on the lessons and the successes so far. We are getting into the next panel where Joel will interact with key partners on the successes and the lessons so far. Now, Joel is a lecturer, an assistant lecturer at the Ashesi University. She's also a key player at the Ashesi Incubator. So she's the perfect person in the whole world of the 7 billion people to moderate this particular session. So please help me welcome Joel, our moderator, as she comes up to introduce our panelists.
Okay, so just to follow in tune, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening if you're viewing from Shanghai. We're here, for, of course, with a global conversation around how we can better move forward in greening our economy. And we find that today, GCIC has done just that with their entrepreneurs. So for today's discussion, I intend to take you on a journey, not only the journey of GCIC, but then understanding what it actually takes to support, develop, and refine the entrepreneurs that are choosing to go green. And what type of ecosystems do they need to enter into that will help them continue along this transformation? Because it's one thing to give them the funding, it's one thing to give them the lessons, but they also need an actual structured ecosystem that's ready to receive them and, of course, move on their behalf. So they can't do it alone. So we have the amazing dream team here, I believe, that have partnered with GCIC to actually make this move forward. And we'll also hear from the entrepreneurs that have received the benefits from this opportunity. So I would like to welcome my panel to the stage with me. So we have Mr. Daniel Ababio, a senior manager at Ernst & Young Ghana. If you could give him a round of applause as he walks towards the stage. Following him, we will have Mr. Dramani Bukori. He's the energy advisor of SNV Ghana. Give him a round of applause. And then we have Mr. Gerald Foucault, a policy fellow at the United Nations University Institute for Natural Resources in Africa. And then we have my good friend, I hope I see him here, yes, Abdul Nasir Al-Dilou, the Entrepreneurship Director of GCIC. And then we cannot forget our entrepreneurs as well. So if I can have Ms. Gifty Minta Kwashe of Tech Shelter to the stage as well. And then, yes, we have our final entrepreneur, Ms. Yvette Tete of Pure and Just. If she's here as well, she can also come to the stage. She's not here. All right, no problem at all. Okay, so welcome everyone. Of course, this is going to be an important conversation that we need to have. Of course, honoring and highlighting the lessons learned as we discussed in the documentary, and then also some of the successes that have taken place. I would like to make a slight change to mix it up a little bit. So if Gifty could come and maybe take the place here of Bakori, so it doesn't seem as though the women are on the outskirts. We're all in this together. All right. No problem, no problem. So the way that I'm going to actually navigate this journey is to talk specifically and intentionally to a few people so that we can kind of set the tone for what it takes to really design an incubator that speaks to the success that we want to see for entrepreneurs. Because if we're real with ourselves, there's several incubators, accelerators that exist globally, and of course those that have occurred in our country here. But what are they doing, right? What are their actual outputs? And how is this really influencing us from a socioeconomic, condition, right? We find that they come out, some of them make profit, we find that some of them are sustainable at some point, and then we also learn that some of them kind of fizzle away. So what can we do to not only ensure the support of these entrepreneurs who come through programs, accelerators and incubators like GCIC, but also thinking about the impact that they make around them. So with that being said, I'm actually gonna start off with Gerald. So Gerald, I want you first to do a quick introduction about who you are and what you do. And then from there, I want you to get into the conversation around what we need to be advocating for, right? So you discussed in the video about 3 main pillars, right? 3 main pillars that we focus on. And these are the things that would essentially lead to change. So talk to us a bit about 1, what you do, and then speak to what needs to happen from an advocacy perspective for us to realize a more green economy.
Thank you very much. So my name is Gerald. I am a policy fellow at the United Nations University, Institute for Natural Resources in Africa. Thank you for your question. We focus on our work on 3 main pillars, and I think that is this is very important, important starting point for getting the kind of ecosystem that we need for entrepreneurs, especially in terms of greening. There is the critical need for engaging the stakeholders, the policymakers, to appreciate greening in the first place. I think that aspects of the speech from Patrick and the first panel focused on foresight planning. We are a sovereign country and we have the right to do whatever we want to do, but we are in a global village where there are patterns that are going on in the world. So if I give an example, for example, the EU Green Deal has been made about greening projections in Europe. And that has got a huge implication on trade between Africa and the European Union in terms of agricultural produce, for example, in terms of energy, for example. It is important for our policymakers to be engaged to appreciate these trends, which should feed into our planning and our policy processes. Our policies must respond to global trends, and it must have inputs that would position Africa or Ghana in the context that makes us reduce any risk associated with those patterns and maximize the benefits or the opportunities from those patterns. So, for example, UNU is making a policy brief for the African Union to engage with their counterparts, that is the European Union, in the Africa Union-European Union Summit that is coming on in October. That is a very important aspect, because when we have that policy setting at that level, then it can trickle down to our policies here in the national level, and also the kind of setting that we need for our entrepreneurs.
Gerald, I want to follow up on that, because what I fear sometimes is that we have a lot of these conversations, right? And we talk about it and we say that this is what we need to do or we should be doing. And I want to know, in your opinion, somewhat off script, how do we actually change the mindset to actually see the value in this and why we should go green? We hear about the risks, we know what's coming, and much to Patrick's point, we are somewhat prepared but still are underprepared, right? So how do we actually make this actionable beyond conversations, meetings, and discussions? What would we need to tell our leaders right now on how we can focus on true advocacy for actual greening this economy?
Thank you very much. I think aspects of what we really need to focus on have been already mentioned. Only yesterday, I spoke to the National Entrepreneurship and Innovation Program, which is under the Office of the President. And I was glad to hear that we already have a national entrepreneurship policy, which is coming out very, very soon. What we need is to be able to make sure that the kind of research and innovation that is required actually feeds into this policy. Policies are not just made. Policies are made based on sound research that also looks at future projections. So as Patrick said, if temperatures are going to rise by 4 degrees, what's going to happen to cocoa? If the world is moving towards renewables, what's going to happen to our oil and gas? We've discovered huge. So what we really need, one of them, is to invest in research and innovation. We need to invest in technologies that, in agriculture, for example, reduces our emissions, but also increase agricultural productivity. Those kind of investments, I would say Ghana is making some steps. The government is investing in building about 1,000 greenhouses very soon. But we need more investment in research and also the kind of incentives that have to be given to entrepreneurs to be able to uptake some of these technologies. So one critical need, I think, and what the area that you focus on is research. That research must inform policy, and that the necessary steps would be taken.
Excellent, thank you so much. So moving right along to that, from that research, I'm gonna come to Dramani, right? So you've talked a lot in your work as well around market growth and access, and of course the commercialization of the research that Jared was just talking about. So quickly, please introduce us, tell us a little bit about what you do, and then speak to this work that you've been doing with GCIC as it pertains to this growth.
Okay, thank you very much, Jewel. My name is Dramani Bukari. I work with SNV, Netherlands Development Organization, as an energy advisor. When we signed up, and by we, I mean SNV, when we signed up to GCIC 5 years ago, the goal was to join hands with all the consortium members to nurture sustainable, very well-rounded, climate-friendly businesses or enterprises. That was the goal. Now, the goal was to tackle this from the perspective of 5 work streams. The area that fell within our mandate and our expertise as an organization, and our expertise as an organization is in sustainable market development. But this is largely in agriculture, renewable energy, but also in water, sanitation, and hygiene. So what we set out to do then was to support the other consortium members in building these enterprises in 2 work streams, market growth and access. Now, you would admit that to have a business run well, the business needs to know what its needs and support services are in order that it can grow through a path, or it can pursue the growth path in a very smooth manner. And so what we did under Market Growth and Access was to open them up to technical support services and to fab labs and laboratory technology institutions and setups in order that they can design, prototype, test, and demonstrate their products. And this, I believe, we have done very successfully over this 5 years. The example of neat eco feeds is an important one, but I am not going to cite that because it appeared to have been overflogged, even though we cannot overemphasize that. I think one of the very critical support services that we gave to one of the enterprises had to do with Macintosh. And Macintosh is into using waste materials, plastics, etc., into the manufacturing of, for the manufacturing of what? Footwear. Now, one of the challenges that he had in the beginning was his business model and the exact kind of business he wanted to do. And thus, SNV afforded him the platform and the opportunity to try and tweak this around, and that accelerated him. So it was not about grant support, but it was about technical assistance to that specific enterprise. Now, one of the things we have also done has been the research commercialization program. And I think that the research commercialization program has been transformational. Now, transformational to the extent that you realize that the traditional way of growing yam, which we all eat, because we are all, perhaps I can dare to say that we all lovers of fufu. Okay, so the traditional way of growing it is to cut yam, just the ordinary yam, into pieces and put it in the soil. Now, what we did was to help the Center for Scientific and Industrial Research to build on a technology through aeroponics to try and multiply these seed yam from the vines of the yam rather than the yam tubers themselves. And that process has a very rapid multiplicative potential, and this is rapidly being taken up by several other enterprises within the country, which then means that it is solving a food security problem, and beyond solving a seafood security problem, it is also ensuring that we can grow the yam market much more faster.
Interesting. I think in our earlier conversation, you said something that really spoke to me about when it comes to research and how sometimes research essentially has the tendency to remain in a pipeline and doesn't get the opportunity to actually meet the market. So you have all of these innovations, things that people have dug deep into, but they don't reach the market in time. So I want you to elaborate a little bit more about how you are helping some of these firms to move through this pipeline and get to the point of actual commercialization. So just one more point on that.
Okay, so thank you very much. The research commercialization program, which I spoke to briefly a while ago, it's important. And it's important because research findings there's a need for research findings to be translated into real products that can benefit the society. Now, the challenge with doing that has been that researchers are not business persons, and researchers do not understand the process of developing a product. And actually, they do not have the expertise of matchmaking their product to the appropriate clienteles. So what the program sought to do is to give them these kinds of support, to ensure that they are able to take their research findings from documentation to real and actual products. One of them I cited was the CDM program, but there's another one which is the Soya Bean program. Now that is interesting because that product sought to solve real and practical challenges with the cultivation of soya bean as we speak. One of the difficulties with soya bean is the fact that it shatters at the point of harvesting. So the particular seed that was developed and the quality of that particular seed was the fact that the shuttering rate was reduced drastically, which then makes it possible for that product to be harvested using a mechanical process, which then means that commercial volumes of that product can now be grown or cultivated.
Thank you so much. So to speaking or building upon the journey that Gerald and both Dramani have kind of laid down for us. So from an advocacy perspective to understanding how research plays into this and innovation of research, I want to transition then to Daniel to talk a little bit more about funding and financing. When it comes to the entrepreneurs who are experiencing GCIC and you having worked with them for these number of years, what are some things that you've learned about entrepreneurship's readiness for access to this capital? Because we say that that is a primary problem, but sometimes you find that once the entrepreneurs obtain this capital, it still doesn't actually meet their needs. So what are you doing about this, and what have you actually learned from this program while working with entrepreneurs?
All right, thank you, Joel. So I'll start off by saying, during the first conversation, Ken Thompson made a very important point, and which was for private firms and funders, they would only invest in the business if it makes economic sense and financial sense. And that is really, really true from our experience. And so what we sought to do right from inception was to, one, build the capacities of these businesses we work with, support them bridge what bottlenecks and issues they have that will present risk to the external funders, and then link them up to these businesses. So 3 things: build their capacities, support them with POC funding, and then link them up. So in building their capacities, we organized what we call mock pitches. Even though the POC was available, proof of concept grants was available for all businesses, we felt that it was also an opportunity and an avenue to have these businesses present a case to tell their stories, because quite apart from telling their stories to us, they are also out there and they have businesses. They would have the opportunity to also tell their stories to investors. And it provided us the opportunity to know the strengths and the weaknesses of these businesses, correct them even before the actual presentation or pitches. That also built the confidence of some of these businesses, which enabled them to be able to pitch to not only the team within Ashesi and the GCIC, but also external funders. Now, once these so the capacity building did not only happen as far as the access to finance, POC mock pitches are concerned, but also the training programs that happen within Ashesi, and Nas will speak to that in a bit more detail. So that is one of the strategies. Once we did that, we supported the businesses with funding. The key lesson, or what we've known and seen from working with these businesses and also the external parties, is the fact that, yes, at the initial stages, they might have a business model that makes a lot of sense, but external funders will not be interested at this stage or at that stage because there are certain things you need to put in place. And at that point, a bank or a financial institution will not be willing to give you the money.
Wait, before you continue,
yes,
elaborate on what are those certain things that need to be in place that you don't see oftentimes?
Okay, so for external funders and banks and financial institutions, one, and we've all been in Ghana, how structured are you? How, in terms of corporate governance, do you have a financial controller that ensures that your fund, I mean, whatever you are spending is signed off so that you don't spend, quote and unquote, anyhow? And so things like corporate governance, making sure that everything is approved by a board before funding is released and all of that, very, very critical for a particular funding institution, right? The second thing is, for a bank or financial institution to give you the money you need, especially for debt funders, they would require some collateral of a sort, right? And some of these collateral are built over time. As you invest in your business and make a lot of gains, you build some of these collateral. So the reason why at the initial stages, it is important to get some, in quote, grant to help you establish all of that
foundation, and then you have comfort in external people also coming in to support, which is why for some of the businesses we've worked with, truly to the conversations we've had and experiences we've garnered, after GCIC investing in them and supporting them with the POC, we see the successes they made in getting follow-on or additional funding. So that is one of the things we've also learned. Now, these businesses ordinarily would not have access to the funders and both grant, equity, and debt. So one of the ways we also helped and supported them is actually establishing right partnership with some of these institutions. Because as individual businesses, they might not have the bandwidth, they might not have the muscle to go before these businesses, these institutions to say, I have come to seek for funding. So when we see opportunities, either in grants or equity or debt or things like that, we link these businesses and they apply, and through that effort, some of them have been able to generate additional funding. Now, beyond all of this, one thing that also became critical is how they manage the funds they have themselves, right? And that actually helped us to develop what we call the financial management training for them, so that even beyond external funding, the internal funds you have, how do you manage it and ensure that it works for you and makes you sustain? I mean, you are able to rely on your own internal funds as opposed to external funding. And the feedback from that has also been great. And it's something we think we should do that more often than we had done it in the past, given when we get to GCIC 2.0. So essentially, these are some of the experiences we've learned, some of the key things we think have helped the businesses we've worked with. One, building their capacities. Two, supporting them to bridge some of the bottlenecks they have. And three, linking them with external funders to be able to support them to scale their businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. So I want to transition now to Naz as the Director of Entrepreneurship at GCIC. So what should be happening? What are some of the activities that took place over this period to help you actually prepare more resilient businesses during this time?
Okay. And I think some of what I'll say would encompass what both Daniel and Dramani and all the others have talked about. So at the GCIC, what we focus on is not just the entrepreneur. So we focus on helping the entrepreneur put together a good business, but also focus on building entrepreneurs who are able to run successful businesses, right? So let me talk about the two. So a key thing, for entrepreneurship and for entrepreneurs to be successful is their decision-making process, right? So you realize that most entrepreneurs will come in, they have a passion, they want to build a business, okay, but they don't necessarily understand business. That's number one. And even for those who understand business, they haven't made those kind of decisions. And so in their decision-making processes, they're not always making the most optimal decisions. And that's one of the reasons why, for instance, when it comes to access to finance, right, it's critically important for us in basically working with the entrepreneur to make decisions around how they are using their funding. So one of the things we learned, for instance, when we started this, the GCIC we had some boot camp where a couple of entrepreneurs received some funding. Then we come in to start the GCIC proper, and then we realized that some entrepreneurs who received funding in the boot camps applied to GCIC again. And the reasons why they needed the funding were the same reason they had cited this time around. So you got $10,000 to do something, 6 months down the line, you apply for funding, and the reasons you cite are the same thing. And it turns out it's not that they've misused the money. It's just that they haven't made the right decisions. So those monies they put it into the business, but those monies haven't yielded any returns, right? And so those are the kind of things that then guided us in the way we develop our program to ensure that, one, we are giving the entrepreneur the skills. First, we're giving them the knowledge that they need, in order to understand the implication of all the things that they do. We're giving them the skills, and then we're also providing the support
for the decision-making process, and that's where we have the portfolio managers and a portfolio manager that works with every entrepreneur throughout their time in the GCIC. So that as you are going along, making all the decisions, you have someone who has made these kind of decisions before and who you can bounce ideas off and be able to make optimal decisions. So that's, that's the philosophy that informed the way we designed it. So first 3 months, you go through an MBA-like training where you are equipped with the business skills. You understand what business actually implies, what business is. Then you're given a portfolio manager who is guiding you through this. And between, in all of this, then we're also providing mentoring opportunities and opportunities for you to develop your mindset, right? So that your mindset is not just about, well, I just need money and I'll make it work. But then you realize what it really means to be an entrepreneur, what you're really trying to achieve, and then you go through the rigor that it requires to achieve that.
Thank you, Nas. So I want to go to one of your entrepreneurs now, so Gifty. So I want you to tell us a story. Why did you feel you needed an incubator like GCIC to help you? Where were you when you entered, and what happened after you left?
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to you all, ladies and gentlemen. So my name is Gifty Minta Akwashi, a co-founder of Tech Shelter Company Limited, an agribusiness company that leverages on climate smart technologies to help greenhouse farmers maximize their efficiency. That's by using software and both hardware to automate their processes. So at the end of the day, they maximize their profits by using our solutions. So prior to joining the GCIC program, we had a great team, a great idea, but we lacked one thing, which was structure. So joining the GCIC program, you realize we're a great fit for what the services that we're providing. So when we joined the incubation program, they identified that we lacked the structure to run or help us grow exponentially. So they helped us as a team to put the things right by giving us consultants through legal, corporate governance, as Daniel mentioned, and just to name a few, to help us be investor ready. So after doing that, they helped us to create a board. Now we have board of directors, we have advisors, and also we have stakeholders we are accountable to, like EY, Cosmos Innovation Center, Ghana Climate Innovation Center, just to mention a few. So joining the GCIC program, because we wanted to grow and become better at what we do and be able to serve the greater population, we realized that GCIC was the best place to be so that we can grow and serve our customers well and properly. So that's why, yeah.
So where are you now in your journey? Yes, as an entrepreneur, after receiving these great services, the support, where are you right now?
Great. So we are still at the growth stage where you're looking for more funding to expand to other countries or other regions as well. Currently, we've been able to launch a greenhouse village where we have about 20 greenhouses we are managing now, and also we are supplying or servicing other greenhouse farmers outside Accra. Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah. Great. So as I was saying, currently we've been able to launch our greenhouse village at Ebri, and we are providing all our services from advisory service, automation, market linkages, and training. And also we want to expand to other regions across Ghana and also go to other countries as well, because we are currently getting a lot of people calling in to come replicate what we do in other neighboring countries. And as I speak, GCIC also connected us to our internal entrepreneurs who needed our support. Let's say Hikma, for instance. Hikma is in Temale. He grows yam seedlings in a greenhouse, and he realized he was having challenges with temperature. So with our services, we provide us automation by installing IoT devices on existing manual operations to make it more efficient. GCIC saw the opportunity for us to go and install our automation for him, and currently he's really doing amazing, and they keep on giving us referrals. So as we stand, we are investor ready, and we've been able to clear our books Our compliance, everything's intact. We are paying our SNET, our tax, everything. And as I speak, there are a lot of investors coming in for us to get more funding to expand. Yeah, so that's where we are now.
Excellent, excellent. You want to add to that now?
Yeah, I wanted to add something. So you asked a previous question, which was an issue about access to finance, what do we need to do and all of that, right? And what we realized at the GCIC also was the fact that some of the entrepreneurs are not able to necessarily get funding because they are at a stage where they need to go through a transition, right? So you started a business. At the very beginning, you have a business model that works, right? But the business model that works for a small business is not the same business model that works for a medium-sized business. So you need to undergo a certain change. For instance, the CEO perhaps is a scientist, but you've gotten to a stage where you need to get someone who really can run a big business, run it, right? But most businesses in Ghana don't easily make that transition, okay? So if you go through something like the investment readiness program, what it does, it allows the business to go through that transition and to transition from being a business that's focused on doing the small things to a business that is ready to scale. Now, at that stage, once you're ready to scale, then it's easy for the money to flow in. The reason why people will not necessarily put the money in is not because there's no money, but it's because you don't have that business model that allows it to scale, right? And it's, it's corporate governance, like Daniel said, but it's also about the team, right? It's about your business model itself, right? And it's all of that. It's about your mindset at that particular stage. So we help you through that investment readiness program, which Tech Shelter have gone through, to be able to make that transition and be able to attract the kind of, not just investors, but the kind of stakeholders you need to become a successful business.
That's great. That's a phenomenal point. I want to kind of transition us, of course, because this is a celebration as well of the achievements, of course, of GCIC. So from each of you, I want you to make note or share what is one of the most memorable, remarkable moments you've had in your experience with GCIC to date. So let's start with Gifty.
Right, thank you. So one of the memorable experiences I've had with GCIC is the Women Transformative Program, where they empower ladies, especially the entrepreneurs, women, to do more and do great. Honestly, we had a lot of people come in and people urged their sentiments. I mean, things they were going through, and they empowered us. They really invested in that program, and it's really transformed the way we think to be thought leaders, that we are capable. And I mean, so far so good. A lot of my colleagues are able to implement exactly what they taught us in the program. And here we are, and here I am too. And I mean, I'm benefiting from what GCIC have done, and it's been amazing. Thank you.
Daniel, do you want to speak to your experience?
Yeah, my most memorable day was when we had the executive director, and it's because we had spent, I haven't told her this, but because we had spent months, years to kickstart the project, and the only bottleneck was because we didn't have a leader. And so when she came on board, for me, it was exciting, and truly we've lived up to the bill. So thank you.
Excellent. Gerald.
As part of our work, we engaged the entrepreneurs themselves. Gifty was not part of that group, but we had a lot of entrepreneurs that we had to talk to, first of all, to know the successes that they have chalked, and to see their contributions to the SDGs as well as the NDCs, Ghana's NDCs, and also to hear from them the kind of challenges, because those were very, very important inputs into our work. We had the opportunity of also engaging with the policymakers themselves to tease out from them the kind of solutions that are available to the challenges that have been identified. And I was quite pleased to see how almost all the work streams are intersectorally contributing to all the 17 SDGs. And that really pleased me, made me very happy to be part of this team that apart from contributing to the development of the country, we are also contributing to the reduction of emissions and contributing to the solving the climate change risk that we all face. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that when Gifty was talking, she mentioned something about compliance. And that really was very striking to me. And it was immediately striking because of the way that over the course of time, I have watched our enterprises strive through the technical assessment that were done on them to become much more greener businesses and to find newer opportunities or even accelerating their businesses. So that for me is one of the very interesting, remarkable things that happened on this project. But for me, one of the very remarkable things that I will recall about this project is also to do with the courage and frankness of the enterprises that we were engaging. I remember when we were doing our closeout engagements with some of the enterprises, and we asked them, tell us in all fairness what you thought about the market growth and access component of the project. One of them got up and said, well, as an entrepreneur, when I entered this business, this incubator, I was a very naive enterprise. And one of the things I needed so badly was an actual interrogation of my specific business operations line, okay? And so while market growth and access gave me interesting figures and statistics and trends within, say, the briquettes manufacturing industry, what I did not, which I had a lot of, was specific interrogation of my particular business and to give me a perspective of where I can go to in the next 10 years. And for me, that was a lesson that I learned. So that courage for me and to be open about the project and the openness with which the project operated for me is one very remarkable thing that I thought many more projects coming on the back of this, should emulate.
And now to close out, I want you to also share with us your greatest lesson learned in this project as well.
All right, I was actually going to ask you if I can do 3 instead of 1.
Oh, okay, great. Close us out with the 3 great stories. That's good.
The first one is basically with the cohort 1 of GCIC. And all those involved in the GCIC will tell you how cohort 1 was difficult, right? Because we had entrepreneurs who came in and whose expectation was that they were going to get $2 million, and all they wanted was give us the money and let's go and do our business. That's what we came here for. There was actually an intervention that was organized where myself and Daniel, had to go and, have a whole chat with them about, why are they in this incubator? What are they trying to achieve? But then by the end of their 1 year, right, when we had conversations with them, there had been, a complete 180-degree shift. Now, the very people who are saying, all I need is the money, give me the money, we're now talking about the specific things they needed in their business. And some of them would actually tell you that, I don't think I'm ready for the money yet. I need to build my business to the place where I can take the money and make it work. And for me, that was testament to how we had been successful in shifting that mindset and getting them to the stage where they actually recognize what they need to become successful entrepreneurs. Right? So that's one. The second one had to do with cohort 5. So we had been thinking about how do we ensure that there's proper, we improve the gender balance, right, within this. And we had employed an intern, worked with Ruka to look at what are the different things that we needed to do. Then cohort 5 comes, we go through the whole process of the search and selection process. And at the end of the day, we look at the lists, and the list was almost 50-50, male to female owned businesses. And for me, that was a very proud moment because we had been thinking about this and making very, very little changes, right, that we believe will have a significant impact. And then to see that impact actually materialize was a very significant thing for me. And then finally, Hikma Farms, right? So Hikma Farms is the entrepreneur that Dramani talked about who uses the vines. He cultivates the vines, for yam seedlings. And the first time that I went to Hikma Farms, he had a prototype in his house, right? And he was thinking of joining our research commercialization program. But we had a conversation and I was like, I actually think the research is ready for commercialization. So instead of going through a research commercialization process that takes time, he should get into the incubator because he's already made a lot of the decisions that needed to be made. And then about 6 months later, when we went back to visit him, he had moved from the prototype in his backyard, and he had a greenhouse where he was cultivating the seedlings, and actually had people who had tried the seedling and was ready to sell. And for me, that was also very significant. It showed how, the kind of impact we make where we are taking just an idea, right? That the person wasn't even sure how successful this was going to be, and making it into a commercial entity. That's it's impactful, so it's making money for him, but it's also impactful for us, right? So that's, those are the three that I would like to close with.
Excellent. So I want to thank you all for your time.
And you talked about lessons, right?
You want to drop? Okay.
I think the most important lesson for me here is that money is not everything, right? Money is important, but it's not everything. As an entrepreneur, your mindset determines everything. Once you have the right mindset, all other things can come together.
Well, that's beautiful. Thank you. So I do want to come back to just saying thank you all for being here on this panel, in hopes that with the audience and those that are watching, you understood what it took for this one green incubator to make its somewhat ecological transformation on this country. And I think that it took all of you all working together. So from Nas and the ideas behind the entrepreneurial mindsets and the shifts that need to occur in order for a lot of the entrepreneurs who enter into these incubators to recognize that it's not just about the money and the funding, but you have to have the mindset even in the team to actually grow beyond that. Because that's what Daniel was speaking to. How do we get them to the point that after this incubation, they can get or continue to get funding to help them to scale and grow as they need to, and grow even out of Ghana, right? How do we look to them to actually become more or have more of a global impact? And that's probably the trajectory we need to be on. And then we go down and we think about Gerald's point when it comes down to advocacy and policies that need to be made or put in place to support these entrepreneurs. And that transitions from the entrepreneurial mindset, but more of a behavioral shift on the value we place on these emerging types of businesses and how they can impact or push us towards a green economy, which is something that Ghana needs to be focused on. So thank you, Gerald, for sharing that. And then Dramini, and how you've been working with the entrepreneurs and showing them how to actually innovate and commercialize the research work that they do, so that it doesn't just remain stuck in the pipeline, that there are ways and means that entrepreneurs can begin to think, not only just from the perspective of just research and methodology, but then looking to the points of business and the pivots that they need to make in order to actualize these spaces. And then we thank the entrepreneurs like Gifty and your team who are willing to actually take the risk and are also receptive to information and the education that you're given, because that's also really key in this, because we also meet entrepreneurs who think they know everything and just need their $1 million to succeed. And we find that soon after, even after an incubation period, again, they have fallen off to some space. So thank you, Gifty, for being that type of entrepreneur. And thank you, Naz and Taruka and the entire GCIC team for bringing us here today to celebrate something so important and so monumental. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. A round of applause to Joel and the panel. I'm not hearing the applause, ladies and gentlemen. Let's give it up for them. So from the Moringa Connects to the bamboo bikes to Translight Solar to Hikma Farms, lots of businesses getting the chance to scale and impact the country and the societies they find themselves in. Now, we are moving on to a very, very important session. So we've looked at our world today and the successes and the lessons, but what is the future we want? And how do we get the future we want? I think it's a very, very important conversation. And we are wrapping up today's strategic dialogue series with this particular panel. And to moderate this, we have Yaba Hafa to moderate this. So please help me welcome her to take her seat. She will introduce her panel and get us started.
Okay, can you hear me? And is Mike East online? I just want to make sure the connection is good. Okay, great. So I'm very pleased to be hosting this panel, The Future We Want. We've been through a journey looking at where we are today, which is a bit rough, being inspired by the work of GCIC, well done, and now we want to tackle what we want to see in our future. There are a lot of hard truths when it comes to climate change. It's a very complex, multi-dimensional issue to tackle with science, economics, politics, society, ethics, all playing a significant role in its complexity. And one scary fact, to me at least, is that even if we get everything right now, and we stop all greenhouse gases, the change of global warming and climate change will still be in effect. And that's just terrifying. But hopefully this panel will shed some light on what is achievable and offer us a good dose of realistic optimism of what it will take to define the future that we want to see and live in, and also concretely address what it will take to get there. So I would like to say that it's time to start. And I'd like to introduce our panel. I'd like to welcome Jabano to the stage. So Jabano is a senior partner at Ernst & Young and the consulting leader for Ghana. Over the past 27 years, Jabano has supported many leading public and private sector organizations globally to successfully deliver a diverse range of services, particularly in the area of SME and entrepreneurial development, finance, and people and organization development. And these are just abridged bios. The full ones can be found online. I'd like to welcome Ruka as well, Ruka Sanusi, who needs no introduction. She's our fearless leader of the GCIC. She's a management consultant professional with over 20 years of international consulting experience in Africa and the UK. Her sectors of experience include international development, government and public sector, banking and finance, health, education, sustainability, and of course, climate change. Before GCIC, Ruka founded Alden's Lane, a boutique business strategy firm, and was also senior manager at PricewaterhouseCoopers, Ghana and Nigeria. And I see Mike. Mike, can you see us? Hello? And Mike is a senior private sector specialist with the World Bank's Finance, Competitiveness, and Innovation Global Practice. In addition to working for the Africa region of the World Bank, he has helped to design and launch the Climate Technology Program that supports clean technology innovation centers in 7 countries globally, including GCIC. And Mike is currently the task team leader of the Ghana Climate Innovation Center project. So welcome to you all. Thank you so much for being here. Let me take my seat. So the first thing I'd like to say is that, as we've entered into this very strange year of 2020, it's been said that the world needs a new decade to be one of ambitious action if we're able to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. And of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, more than half are dedicated to contributing to the climate in some way, which is laudable. But it's already been assessed that action to meet the SDGs is not yet advancing at the speed or scale that we need. So at this point, we know that some of the impacts of climate change are inescapable. They're here to stay with us. But there must be still some time to move the world onto a more sustainable development path as defined by the SDGs. So I'd like to get the panel's view, starting with Jabano, that in your view, what is a realistic vision for the future that you in particular want? And are the SDGs realistic goals to work towards, especially in the time frame that we have left? It's 2020, this thing was supposed to be done by 2030. What is your vision, Jabano?
Wow, thanks very much, Yaba. The future we want, the goals that have been set through the SDGs, I think are very important ones. What it actually does, it galvanizes action. If you think about the significant changes that the world is experiencing now, and certainly has experienced over the last several months, it's caused the world to act, to take action. Even just look at Ghana, the sort of decisions which have been made, not just by the government alone, but by the people as well. If we can harness that purposeful decisions and action that we've taken and focus on what we want to achieve differently in the next 10 years, I think it's achievable. The SDGs gives us a common language, a language that we can use to assess how we are developing. What's sustainable development all about? It means how can we, I guess, enjoy our lives today without destroying the world for the future generation? So what can we do today to ensure that we live fulfilled lives, at the same time to don't take it away for the future generation? So in all the areas that the SDGs focuses on, there's ample opportunity to take those goals and achieve them. Let me look at health. Health is obviously center. What can we do differently, which has been caused by this pandemic? It has taught us lessons that we need to improve our health system, and we can do significantly more and will make a huge difference. So I think that the vision of the SDGs are still relevant, even more relevant than they were 5 years ago, and certainly will provide us a good roadmap, both governments, civil society, and indeed private sector, to focus on what we want to achieve in 10 years' time.
Thank you. So Jabana believes that they're still relevant. Ruka, what is the future that you want, and do you think they're still relevant as well?
I want to start by agreeing with Jabana. I think the SDGs remain very, very relevant. And I want to also just, think about the mechanisms by which the SDG came into being. It wasn't just a whole load of international civil servants and multilateral organizations that just thought about these things. There's a lot of consultation globally as to what the SDGs, should include, and they were based on ideals, founded on, the universal basic human rights, right? So I think the SDGs are our SDGs. They belong to you as much as they belong to the young girl who's in primary school in Somalia, as to the professional that is in Hobart, Australia. It's all, the SDGs are for each and every one of us. I don't see them as lofty. I believe that, there's nothing, it's not even an ideal to want clean water. I think that's one of the SDGs. It's a basic human right. I mean, yesterday, the private water company that provides water to the area that I live, they had some challenges. So they were repairing the system yesterday. This morning I woke up and it was like, the water in the house is brown. It's brown in color. I mean, that shouldn't be. So you think, actually, this is why we have the SDGs. A couple of years ago, I nearly lost one of my personal driver because he had cholera. What had happened, he'd gone to eat somewhere, and whatever it was, a gutter, this was in Lagos. There's a gutter behind, and perhaps the buka that he went to were not, preparing food properly. So for me, the SDGs are very realistic, and we should all take time to actually understand them better, because I'm sure if we did, we might be a little bit more mindful as to how we live and the kind of even the consumer goods that we choose to buy. But the future that I want, I mean, really, I think the future that I want is one of balance, where we have economic prosperity and also ecological prosperity, where there is no trade-off. There doesn't have to be a trade-off between economic prosperity and ecological prosperity. Jabana spoke about this health pandemic. Actually, the health pandemic has turned to an economic pandemic. It's affecting education. Some of us, with children, their kids are at home. They're learning from home. It's affected our pocket. It's even affecting mental health. It's affecting, it has so many dimensions. So I think the future that we want is a future that doesn't trade off one thing against the other, but recognizes that our actions or our inaction today can negatively and or positively impact tomorrow. So that balance needs to be structured in. And did you also, because you just asked 2 questions, so I've answered okay, so I can stop now, right? No, but I mean, I think I want to just talk about, what governments, must be doing around the SDGs. I think, so we have the SDGs, and I think at the central government,
at the local government, at the municipal level as well. How do we factor the SDGs into everything that we're doing? From waste collection in each village, if we do it at all, to how we power our street lights. We're in Africa. We can use solar power. So in the everyday things that we do, we need to be mindful, not just only in regulation, but as consumers as well, we need to make a demand for green goods and services, or more sustainable goods and services, and just even financing. Sustainable financing is also something that people are choosing to invest in sustainable products. So I think action from the private sector and the government sector, we need to be very, very mindful that the SDGs are our SDGs, and we must really use them practically every single day.
Thank you for that optimism of believing that a future of balance is possible. Mike. We can't hear you. Let's just check, but we would like to, once the sound is fixed, we'd like to know what your vision of the future is. I wonder if the online folk can hear.
How is it now? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. You're back.
Good. Okay. Okay. So good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for having me virtually. It's nice to be a virtual panelist at this session. So, good question. What's the future we want? I think that the SDGs actually do a very good job of laying out the future we want. So that's not necessarily the important question. The important question is, can we get there, and how do we get there? But I do agree with by the deputy ambassador from Denmark earlier that you start with the goals, right? So the SDGs give us the goal, and then how we get there is a critical question at this point. And it's true that the world is not necessarily on track for a good portion of the SDGs, and particularly with the pandemic, there's going to be a huge setback. So the question is, do you want to be glass half full or glass half empty with this? And I think for me, I'm glass half full, and I see in particular technology advances as the way for us to meet many of the SDGs. The climate crisis is becoming more and more apparent every day. And I think, despite it being a slow-moving crisis, people are waking up to what's necessary. And, collective action is needed. Governments need to set appropriate policies. They need to provide financing to do early-stage R&D, to de-risk those technologies as they become viable business models. But you can see that working. In particular, you look at renewable energy, and in many places, renewable energy is actually a cheaper way to produce energy than fossil fuels. So you can look at over 50% of the world where renewable energies are now viable commercially without any subsidies to produce grid connected or off-grid energy. And so you see there's ways forward, and it's technology, invention, technology deployment, I think will get us there. But that in industries that are related to climate, regulation and policy are critical. So I think we need to continue to lobby governments to set the correct policies, to implement those policies. Just because you have a feed-in tariff in place, but it's not actually being paid to the producers of energy according to the agreements they signed, that also does not enable progress. So I think policy, implementation of policy and technology can get us to this future that we want. But as Ruka said, the trade-offs are becoming less distinct. You can go forward in a sustainable manner that's also a positive economic outcome for businesses, for governments raising taxes, for investors and banks. So I'm a glass half full person, and I think the future is possible to be sustainable if we continue to work on all those different dimensions.
Thank you, Mike. So I think we're on the same page with what we'd like the future to look like. The SDGs have painted a picture that we really want to achieve. So just touching on what you said, Mike, and this question will go to Jabano, implementation is really important. And I know given your vast work with public and private sectors across the globe, I'm sure you've seen your fair share of well-prepared plans, policies, things that have hope and vision falling flat because implementation was an issue. So even with the sound policies of the SDGs and our governments across the globe, it can be a challenge. So how do we make sure that we successfully implement the plans that we've put in place, the SDGs that we've said that we're going to stick to by 2030, whether it'll happen or not? How do we stick to implementation?
The question about implementation or execution, as we sometimes call it, is quite important. It's really all about finding the appropriate priorities and working with the various partners. So you have government on one side, civil society, then obviously the general populace. And if you take Ghana's situation, it's about finding the priorities. Almost everything you look at within the SDGs are very important. But there are a few priorities that, if they can be harnessed, let's take digitalization, as Mike alluded to. Ghana has embarked on a digitalization journey. We are certainly seeing the dividends. And if we can focus on a few things in that area, then we have a chance of making a huge difference. Let's take Ghana. Digitalization is one. We also have the Continental Free Trade Agreement. A few things that are put in place, prioritize them, establish the key stakeholders, and hopefully you can get them on board. The relationship between government, PPPs, public-private partnerships, and the interests that you can get in civil society organizations to lobby for certain amounts of change. That is where I think as organizations, especially like GCIC, who play a catalytic role, can actually help the government focus on a few things to get well. So I guess to be able to implement well is focusing on execution, is getting a few stakeholders together, getting a few priorities that make a difference to the population, and target those.
Thank you. And I'll just go back to Mike. When the Deputy Ambassador was speaking, she also spoke about, regulations and how that also plays an important role in implementation. But Mike, how do you regulate regulations? Sometimes the regulations they fall through as well.
That's a tough one. You usually need independent bodies to look at the regulators themselves. It's hard to set up too many bodies, but smart regulations are really what are needed. Some regulations can be implemented without the need for people to intervene, right? So there's electronic systems that can help businesses get registered. There's automatic payments that are triggered that can go directly from a bank or a fund without humans needing to review things. So in many ways, there's technologies that can improve regulations, but you still need to hire good people and spend money on good regulators, and you need to learn from best practice, and I think share what works across countries. And institutions like the GCIC can look at regulations abroad and come and look at the regulations in Ghana and say, look, this is working for entrepreneurs in South Africa or in Denmark, and we are doing something different here in Ghana. Let's talk about how to change that and have a very positive conversation on how to improve regulations. It doesn't need to be government bashing. It can be very positive and lead to, small changes in regulations can lead to really big business opportunities and markets functioning much, much better than they were with just a small change.
Thank you. Okay, let's hone in a bit on Ghana. We know that Ghana is not a large contributor to global emissions or global GDP. But regardless, and like all countries, it will feel the impacts of global decisions on the climate and sustainability acutely. So what role does a country such as Ghana play in global sustainability, which requires action from the largest countries and overall collective action?
Okay, thanks, Yaba. That's an excellent question. So I think the president of Ghana is actually the co-chair of the SDG advocates, right? And Ghana is one of the few countries that have integrated the SDGs into the annual budgeting system. Now, I think last year, $10 billion from government funds, went towards, was earmarked for activities around SDGs, which is about 92% of the budget, that was allocated for SDGs. The other 8% was funded, from what I understand, by the donor partners. Another way that Ghana is showing leadership is also, yesterday was the first country in Africa to bring together a group of people to look at how to finance the country financing roundtable for SDGs. So Ghana is demonstrating leadership around the SDGs. But I think we can go further, particularly if we're thinking about financing. One of our our sister organization is Wangara Green Ventures. So if you're thinking about how to even climate action is part of the SDGs, and if you're thinking about financing the SDGs, a lot of things that a lot of the funding goes towards big projects, infrastructure projects, billions of dollars. And a lot of our entrepreneurs are thinking, I'm hearing all this money, the Global Environment Fund, the Global Climate Fund, the Global this, the Africa Regional this. But where's all this, the money it doesn't seem to trickle down. And this is the complaint that we get from our enterprises. So in terms of, as Ghana is thinking of that country financing round, for the SDGs, can a certain amount of money be allocated for the likes of Wangara Green Ventures, right? To actually invest in small and growing businesses that are focused on, that are green enterprises or want to green their enterprises or want to build sustainable businesses. In addition to even thinking about things like in business incubation, GCIC should not be the only national green business incubator in Ghana. We need about 100 GCICs. It doesn't have to be, operated by GCIC. It's fine, we can do a lot more, but we need a lot more support for the SME sector that makes up 70% at least of our economy. We need a lot more support going to them, advisory services, in the financial services, so that they can build responsible and sustainable enterprises. So I'll stop by saying Ghana is showing leadership, and I think we should commend Ghana for that around SDGs. There is an office of SDGs in the office of the president. I mean, that's remarkable in of itself, headed by a very capable Dr. Eugene Owusu. So we're showing leadership, but I really want to see that leadership trickle down. I'm a little bit biased because my work is with the small and growing business sector, but I think we need that to trickle down just because of the makeup of our economy and how SMEs, really represent the majority of enterprises in the business sector.
Thank you. And Jabano, do you agree, or do you have anything else to add about Ghana's role?
Yeah, no, I think Ghana, just as Lucas said, certainly is playing a leadership role in several areas, and it can actually take advantage of that. So if you take, let's go to COVID again. There's this issue about debt in Africa. Ghana helped catalyze the African countries to come together to engage the multilaterals around debt. So Ghana can use its respecting the world to identify a few issues, influence African countries, and use the African bloc to lobby amongst the global partners. So Ghana certainly has a role to play and is utilizing that as leverage. I think we can only do but more.
Thank you. So now we'll dive deeper into the world of climate change, Mike. Two words we hear regularly in the discussion of climate change. One, mitigation, reducing emissions and stabilizing the levels of heat-trapping greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. And then two, adaptation, adapting to the climate change that's already occurring. So from your experience, do you think a country like Ghana needs to focus on one as opposed to the other?
Well, the sort of politically correct answer is to say you need to do both. And it's true. But if you really, come down to it, the sort of industrialized world is the one that's doing the greatest part of the emissions, along with China and India at this point. And many emerging economies just have to focus more on adaptation than on mitigation. Now, that's not to say that Ghana should not consider mitigation in its development path. It obviously should. It should look to use renewable energies when possible. There's ways to do that that are financially and economically viable at this point. But if you consider the impacts that Agata spoke about and Patrick spoke about, potentially wiping out the cocoa industry in Ghana as temperatures change and rainfall patterns change, there's a lot that can be done. It's simple things like smart irrigation, sustainable reuse of land. Adaptation has to be, I think, first and foremost on the minds of Ghanaian policymakers, because in a way you're a taker of what's going to happen, not a maker of what's going to happen. So I think the more that Ghana can be ready to adapt, be prepared to adapt, and still at the same time take on the mitigation technologies, I think that's the way to go. But the honest answer is I think adaptation has to be a stronger focus in Ghana while not ignoring mitigation.
Thank you. And Ruka, working at the GCIC, you've seen a lot of businesses come in and out of your office. Would you agree with Mike or disagree?
I mean, most definitely. I think, the priority for Ghana must be on climate adaptation. But this is just fact, because if a lot of the enterprises that come through the GCIC, their innovation is on climate adaptation. And what we find really, really interesting is that, and this is really interesting for me anyway, personally, there are patterns regionally. A lot of the enterprises that come from the northern parts of Ghana, not just the northern region, but the northern parts of Ghana, have climate innovation around climate smart agriculture, because those are really the majority of the where a lot of agriculture activity takes place. So they're seeing the effect of climate change already, and they're developing innovation around agriculture. In the southern regions, it's all about domestic waste, right? Because these are the urban enclaves, right? And then we generate a lot of waste, right? And then you have again climate innovators coming up with amazing services and products, that deals with this. And it's all adaptation. It's all to do with adaptation. So for me, adaptation must, remain a priority, whilst not, forgetting mitigation, particularly as the Ministry of Trade are talking about, industrialization. It's great, but it has to be sustainable. It has to be climate smart industrialization. And we shouldn't again have this trade-off as we're seeking to industrialize small-scale industries, right? As we're seeking to industrialize as a nation through small scales, let's not have that trade-off with the environment. Let's not have that trade-off with the ecology. Let's remember to do so in a way that is sustainable. So we have sustainable cities, which is another another SDG. We have sustainable systems, even in the more rural areas, in local government, et cetera. Yeah.
Thank you. Jaban, I want to touch more on mindsets, which has been discussed in previous panels, but I think it's really important as we think about the future that we want, and especially trying to fight one of the biggest challenges of our lifetime, climate change. So when some individuals of the highest offices globally don't believe that climate change even exists, what steps do we need to take to make sure that our children at least grow up to be believers and advocates of a green economy, a green Ghana, a green planet?
Wow. Our children, yeah.
Because at this point, the children are the future.
Yeah.
We're doing our best, but we have to make sure that they're part of the equation.
Your earlier panel had an educationist on
Yes.
it. I mean, it's really all about education. This whole climate business, that's one of the reasons why I like the SDG goals, is about educating people about the risks that we face going forward. Patrick mentioned the increase in temperature.
or if you see the forest fires, assuming there are forest fires in a significant way in Ghana, or the hurricanes in the US, assuming those hurricanes came to Ghana. So if we can find a way to educate the youth, indeed our children, about the risks involved in this whole climate change issue, and educate them about what needs to be done to help reduce the chances of it happening. Let's take our water bodies and what is happening to our water bodies. If we can just even educate them on that level, I think it really helps. Let's look at plastic waste. If all school children were educated on the hazards that plastic waste cause, and all schools can educate them enough so that the schools are kept clean, if they grow up and become policymakers, it'll become easier. So I think education has a huge role to play, both, I guess, at the public level and also at the individual level as well.
Yes.
Sorry, I just want to add to that, to add to Davino's point and his excellent point. I'm sure many people here would have heard of Greta Thunberg.
Yeah.
She's a teenager, right?
Mm.
Right?
Yeah.
And you know, she's got God knows how many millions of followers globally.
Mm-hmm.
Children who are saying to us adults and parents, grow up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you didn't inherit the earth from your grandparents. You know, you're borrowing it from us, and we demand that you leave us a planet Earth that is still livable, that we can still enjoy our basic human rights, and you take action now, because there is no planet B. So children are already taking climate action. You know, I was fortunate to be at the UN Climate Summit in the last September. My goodness, the Friday, the whole of New York was blocked because children were marching. And you know, some of the participants of the conference that I was on were like, their children are saying to them, why do you have to travel? Why did you have to travel? Because all the, you know, your carbon footprint coming from Timbuktu to New York or wherever we all came from. So actually children are making demands of us. And you know, so we need to listen. Just like, you know, institutions like us are saying we want maybe the government sector should listen to us and bring a new regulation. The young adults and children of today are saying to us as parents, take responsibility. I want a planet Earth that is livable so that I can live to be 70 and still enjoy planet Earth. So they're making demands on us now, and we must listen to them.
So we need to listen, we need to act.
Yeah.
So sticking with you, Ruka, we're here because of GCIC. And so as it enters into its second phase, GCIC 2.0, what role do you think GCIC has in elevating Ghana's awareness of and contributions to climate change and sustainability?
I think GCIC will continue to play a huge role. I mean, we're the first business incubator and the only one that is national. I know that there's another one now that is focused on certain urban enclaves. But I hope we can give birth, to more incubators like GCIC. It doesn't mean that we have to be the one managing, those other incubators. I feel that we need to amplify as an organization that works at the nexus of climate change, private enterprise, economic development, and ecological prosperity. I feel that, we need to amplify, the voices of SMEs, and we need to also amplify the advocacy around taking individual climate action, private enterprises taking climate action by bringing sustainable goods and services to the marketplace, right? We need to ensure that in terms of policy advocacy, which is so crucial, we are using, through empirical data, showing each sector ministry, this is what you need to do. Like sometime last year, I think with one of our consortium partners did some research around, rice cultivation, right? And the methane emissions that come through that whole process. For me, it was a fascinating discussion because the previous December, Christmas time, there was a whole lot of advocacy around buying made in Ghana rice, everybody's buying made, and it's good, buy local, buy Ghana. But how did we produce the rice? Was it in a sustainable manner? What are the options for, what are the alternative options for production so that we have less emissions? So for me, I think we actually need to give birth to more ideas that are, to not just only business incubators, but, whether it's business, maybe influence business associations. AGI, what are they doing around the green economy? I think, is it just about the economy without the ecology? Can we influence the work of AGI? The chambers of commerce, what are they, there are many chambers of commerce in Ghana. We need to influence their work as well. So it's not just about, I'm not just concerned about GCIC. I'm concerned about the influence of GCIC and that we are influencing the business sector, the government sector in the way that we can for the, for the good of the small and growing business sector and for the good of the ecology and the environment as well as the economy in Ghana.
Yeah, so really helping to make sure that we're taking holistic approaches to everything that we do.
Yeah.
So I'd just like to close us off with this question from each of you, please, that, if we hold a similar dialogue in 2 years' time, what will we be discussing? And are you optimistic on Ghana's path towards sustainable development? So Mike, we'll start with you.
Thanks, Yava, and thanks again for having me. Yes, I'm optimistic. I'm very proud of the work that GCIC and its sister organization Wangara are doing in Ghana, and I think that they and similar organizations can lead the way to a greener growth path in Ghana. And I think part of that is by being the voice of the business community, of investors, of the citizens, those who the politicians listen to. You asked about how we can get politicians to listen. Well, you need organizations that can be the voice of those constituents, and the business community and investors, those are very important constituents. And so I'm very optimistic that the dialogue and the activism and the evidence is pointing in the right direction to influence the policy. And I think in 2 years' time, it'll still be going in that direction. It's a big aircraft carrier that's being moved from old pathways to new pathways, and it's slowly moving, but I think it's going in the right direction. And I think even these types of dialogues we're having today are very important to continue to shift the conversation in the right direction and to point out the evidence of why that direction is the best one for the long term, but also increasingly in the short term as well. So I'm an optimist. Thanks.
Thank you. Jabano.
Yes, certainly. 2 years' time, certainly for Ghana, very optimistic. Let me focus on GCIC. Lucas said a couple of things. I just want to summarize what I think GCIC 2.0 can focus on in the next 2 years. Two things. It really become a loudspeaker. To really, it has the platform. It's done very well over the last number of years. It has the relationships both in the government sector, the CSO, and the private sector. It can certainly become a loudspeaker to advocate for all the issues that we obviously hold dear to us. So that's one. Secondly, it should really take up its role of being a catalyst for demand for all the cohorts that it supports. So let's take a practical example. I understand there's a cohort called Nelplast producing plastic paving stones in Tema. GCIC can act as a catalyst to engage, let's say, even TMA to use plastic paving stones in Tema. Engage all the water companies that produce all this waste plastics and get them to contribute to the process. So GCIC within 2 years can really be a catalyst for demand. So two things, act as a loudspeaker and be a catalyst for the demand for all the cohorts. And I think you can really establish your place in the history of this great country of ours.
Thank you. Ruka.
See, Javana has said everything that I wanted to say. So I mean, Jabs. So I completely agree with him. So it's really about amplifying the voice of green business in all the various sectors where we have influence. So I hope in 2 years' time we'll be talking about the gains and how we some of our businesses their work is more mainstream, right? And local governments, central governments are using them, even though they're SMEs, to implement certain contracts, right? But also, I really, really, really want to see louder voice for women entrepreneurs in the green economy. Women are more negatively impacted by climate change than men. It is a fact, not just saying this because I'm a woman and a gender advocate. So how can we also bring in diversity and inclusion into this whole debate about private enterprise and women? Especially, how can we, work with mainstream businesses today, right? Whether you are a business making cosmetics, we know a lot of palm oil goes into manufacturing cosmetics, and we know what that's doing to the forest and the ecosystem. How can we have more mainstream businesses, green aspects of the operations? That's going to be something that we hope in 2 years' time we can give you examples, because it's not just about having new businesses, emerge, responding to climate change. It's really about, we'll have more impact if we have existing businesses, right? I mean, whether it's you're making cosmetics, whether you're manufacturing, the local textiles, whether you're a carpenter, whatever it is that you're doing, how can we have more, how can you do so in a way that is, it's contributing to the transition to a low carbon economy.
Thank you very much, and thanks to you all. So I'll just end here saying that we're really all in this together as we carve out the future that we want. And the more we know now, the more we can plan and the more we can prepare, and GCIC has its work cut out for it. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. A round of applause for Yaba and the panel. This has been great. I just want Mr. Jabano, please sit, because Yaba sit as well, because we are just about wrapping up. And Ruka will say some final words before we go. But you asked a very good question. 2 years' time, where would we be? What would we be talking about? I have followed the GCIC and the various companies that have run through the GCIC. They are doing very well in education, in healthcare, in agric and agribusiness. We've seen others also in the energy space. And with the growth I'm seeing, I'd like to say that in 2 years' time, I want to see one big GCIC, not 100 GCICs, coordinating a lot of the growth like we've seen in the past 4 years, getting more funding, so that when we talk about a sustainable Ghana, GCIC will be at the center of that particular revolution. And in 2 years' time, we'll see businesses, government agencies, and more donor agencies seeing the vision and supporting the mission of the GCIC to make Ghana more sustainable and to build a sustainable Africa. That's what I wish to see in 2 years. And I know we'll get there. Amen.
Amen to that. Thank you, Kojo.
So Ruka, we'll take your final words. Give us your final words as we prepare to depart.
Okay, final words, gosh. Actually, to be honest, what I really want to do is just to thank my colleagues. We've spoken about the entrepreneurs, and I love all the entrepreneurs, the ones that are here, the ones that are watching online, but my colleagues have worked incredibly hard over the last, 4 years or so. And, when you're doing something pioneering, it requires leadership of thought. It requires building a vision, bringing everybody along, and really pushing yourself and pushing the boundaries. And I really want to commend my colleagues. Please stand up. Daniel, Dramani, Gerald, stand up. You're going to be clapped for. Kofi, Frank, Angelina, Dominic, you know yourself, stand up now. Naz, Ahuma, please help me give them a round of applause, because they worked incredibly hard to create, in such a short time, an institution that is having national influence. And I also just want to really thank my colleagues at the bank who have been phenomenal. I mean, completely phenomenal, from the country directors to Mike, to Yaba, to Charlotte, to Agatha. You guys have been like our siblings. So really, thank you all. Thank you. So that's cool. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying anything big anymore. Just thanking my colleagues and here and also at the bank. Okay.
And before Ruka, Jabano, and Yaba leave us, I think it's also fair for us to acknowledge the journalists who have been reporting on the work of the GCIC.
Yes.
I see Rasta all the time whenever I come for GCIC events. And when Daniel was speaking, he said that the moment he was touched, where he was happiest, was when we found an executive director for the GCIC. You've acknowledged your colleagues, but I think that you've led the GCIC very, very well. You've shown leadership, your drive, the vision, the energy, and everything that you've done for the GCIC is the reason why we're here today. And so I'd like all of us to help me also give a big round of applause to Ruka for the leadership. We need more leaders like you, and we appreciate the work you've done with the GCIC. And as we go into GCIC 2.0, we pray for more strength for you so that you lead the team into delivering the results that we need. Thank you all very much for coming. My name is Kojo Akoto Boateng. I work with City FM and City TV. And I'm also proud to have supported the GCIC. There's more ahead of us. Let's enjoy the rest of the day. Let's keep pushing for sustainability and the green economy. And let's build Ghana and the world together. Thank you for coming, and thank you for watching online. The panelists, we can take one group photo. So, Gerard, if you can come, the photographer. We cannot go down. Okay, all right. Let all the panelists around.